And I'm just going to give a very brief introduction for Diana, and then we'll get started. She's going to talk for about 40 minutes, and then we'll have some time for questions at the end. So I look forward to hearing from you all then. Diana Nicholette Jeon is an award-winning contemporary artist who lives and works in Honolulu, Hawaii. Thanks for joining us from Hawaii. She holds an MFA from University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and her work has been shown in numerous solo and group exhibitions nationally and internationally. She's also received 4 Hawaii SFCA Purchase Awards, the International Photo Award, the 11th Julia Margaret Cameron Award, the Pollux Award, and the Mobile Photo Award, among others. And she's been featured in Gente de Fotografia, Shots Magazine, PF Magazine, and Art Photo Index, and Lens Culture. And also most recently in the October issue of Beta Developments in Photography. If you've seen that recent post from Diana, that's pretty exciting. This series that she's going to talk about, that's also on the walls at Blue Sky, Nights as Inexorable as the Sea, was a top 200 finalist in Photolucida's 2019 Critical Mass competition, which is where we on the exhibition committee saw Diana's work. So it was really great. Such great work came through, comes through every year in that competition. So that's a success story from Critical Mass. So thank you, Photolucida, for doing that every year. And this series is also going to travel to the Disorder Gallery in Sydney in November, which I believe is next month. Time is kind of a strange thing right now. But so that's also exciting. She's got a lot of things going on right now. In addition to all of this, Diana is also an editor at 112 Publishing, which is based here in Portland. So thank you, Diana, for being here with us, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your talk.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. I can barely see only a few faces right now, but when it was still on the screen, I could see a lot of people who I either know or names that I know because we've interacted on Facebook or Instagram. So I'm really, really grateful for you coming and for my husband coming. Thank you, honey. So I'm gonna share my screen starting now. And start my thing as soon as my computer goes along with this. So the way I figured I would do this is I would tell you a little bit about my background and my journey sort of thing, and then tell you about this series. So obviously this series is called Nights as Inexorable as the Sea. And I started this series in 2017. Obviously, this is a presentation for Blue Sky Gallery because that's who you signed up for. And I have this love of this quote from Edgar Degas, which is that art is not what you see, but what you make others see. Because personally, for me, with my art, what I show people and what I actually see in the real world are rarely the one and the same. If you've seen most of my work or even just a little of my work, you've probably seen that not much of it looks like things in reality. I'm not a very documentary photographer, although I have done a little bit of it from time to time. Most of my work is really what comes out of here. Even if it's a straight photo taken with a camera, it ends up not so much looking like a straight photo taken with a camera. So I'm really attached to this quote because of that, because I think that through what I see and how I see the world, I can hopefully change what others see. So a little bit about me, and this is a self-portrait from my self-portrait series called Self-Exposure. And I think that sort of shows you radically what I was saying, that what I put out there isn't often what is right in front of you, because I don't really look like that, as you can see. Oh, So when I was growing up, my dad was a artist. Well, he went to school to be an artist. He went to school to be a sculptor at the School of Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. And so he got drafted in his final year of student teaching, and he came back from the war and really never made art again. But he still loved art, and we used to go to the museum all the time. I had this strange love of the mummy room. I was greatly attracted to the mummy room. I thought it was so interesting. I did art all my life. My father was probably my toughest critic. My father could take a piece of flat metal and a little hammer and some heat and make it look like exactly whoever was sitting in front of him. This is a skill I will never have. I can't even do that with a photograph, make it look exactly like somebody. So the idea of taking a piece of flat metal and making it look like somebody, to me, that's a pretty awesome skill. So whenever I would draw, my father would be like, oh, that's very stylized. It doesn't really look like what you're doing. You need to go, you know, more study from nature. You need to stop drawing from photographs, whatever. It never really measured up. And I went to high school art classes, and that was what I took for all my sort of extracurricular, except for cooking. If you've seen my Facebook, you probably know that I cook a lot. And so cooking and art were the two things I took as extracurricular in high school. And I took pretty much every art class you could take. I used to make little watercolors, well, big watercolors. And they were pretty, and that's about all they were. You know, they had no other function in the world except to look pretty. They were little landscape scenes, and a few years ago, my mother passed away, and I had no idea that any of these still existed, but she actually had some of them from my high school days saved in her closet. They were large and they weren't framed, but they were, you know, put away in her closet. I hadn't even known they still existed or remembered really what they looked like. So that was sort of weird. My mother took me looking at colleges, and I grew up in Massachusetts. So we went to RISD, which was half hour away from where I grew up. And we went to look at it, and I was a cheerleader. And I went there, and it was like, oh my God, these people are all hippies. I'll never fit in there. I'm not anything like them. And I ran the other way. I never even applied there. I went to school for a good career for a girl. I went to school to be a dental hygienist, which is why there's a picture of a mouth there. And I went to the school of, I went to Forsyth School of Dental Hygiene, which at the time was affiliated with Northeastern University. Now it's changed so many times, it doesn't even exist under the Forsyth name, but it used to be really close to the museum, like right next door to the museum along the Fen in Boston. So it was nice for me to be able to sort of revisit that art part of my life as I was doing that. I graduated and I got a job. And at my very first job, I worked for a dentist. I don't really want to say too much about this, because what I will say is that there was 4 women and 1 man in the office, and he sexually harassed all of us. He pushed me up against the wall. He pushed the other girls up against the wall. And this was a period in time where the victims did not talk about this. This is many years before Me Too, and it caused me to quit my job. And when I quit and I went looking for other work as a dental hygienist, he nicely told everybody that I was the worst dental hygienist in the world and that he fired me. I did get one more job, but at that point I was so put off by the experience that I knew I really wasn't going to work as it. I moved to California, and I had to kind of consider, what do I do now? Like, I'm trained to do this one thing, and it's a really specific thing. What do I do? How do I find a job? So I had to really evaluate what kind of skills I had other than the technical skills of, you know, cleaning somebody's teeth with little instruments. Like, what can I do? What did that school teach me to do besides that? And what really it was influencing people. You have to influence people to brush their teeth, to take care of their teeth, to floss. And it might sound stupid, but think about when your hygienist tells you that. Do you actually do it? Like, how persuasive do they have to be for you to do it? So I determined that I had this influence ability, and I parlayed that into recruiting. I recruited engineers in the Silicon Valley. I worked in the Silicon Valley at a time that it was different than now. It didn't stretch all the way to San Francisco. It was mainly located down in the South Bay, with a little bit over Santa Cruz and a little bit north up into San Mateo County or Berkeley. But, you know, I lived and worked in like the Mountain View, Santa Cruz area. I worked for recruiting firms, and then I went to work for, I don't even know if they still exist anymore, a company called 3Com, which was started by Bob Metcalfe, who was actually one of the founders of the internet back when it was a DARPA project. So this platform that we're on now exists because of the man who he was the company chairman, and he sat next to me in a cubicle in my job as a recruiter at 3Com when they had 250 employees. And he was an amazingly wonderful, nice, non-egotistical guy. And from there, I went to Sun Microsystems, which more of you have probably heard of, especially since Larry Ellison bought the company in the ensuing time since I left. In 1990, I moved into employee relations, and the company was treating people in ways that weren't compatible with my values as for how I felt people should be treated in the workplace. The economy was bad, and they were going to lay people off. And if you asked to be laid off, you would get 6 months pay. But if you took your chances and you were laid off, you would get 2 months pay. So I decided to raise my hand, and I thought it might be a good opportunity to go back to school, but I needed to save a little bit more money first. It took me a year to find another job because the economy was really, really bad. But I ended up being a director, acting director for a year of HR at a biotech company, and that was one of the best jobs I ever had in my life. I loved working at biotech instead of high tech. It's a totally different kind of personality that the industry attracts. And then that contract was over, and I was like, I'm going to go back to school. So I applied to, summer program at Berkeley, and I took 2 classes together that you should never, ever take together, because Berkeley in the summer is really, really intense. And I took drawing and photography the same semester, which you should have taken it at 2 different times. But here I am, I've been out of school for 10 years. What do I know? I had a really hard summer. My drawing instructor told me I should seriously think about finding something other than art to be in. My photography instructor, I drove him nuts because I was the person in the darkroom who would continually not be happy with just making a photograph and dodging and burning it. I was that person who wanted to hand paint their photograph, who wanted to solarize their photograph, the person who wanted to put other things on acetate on top of the negative, on the enlarger, or on top of the print on the enlarger, and alter it somehow. I seemed the kind of personality that Photoshop was created for. So it's interesting that I came out of the Silicon Valley. I spent that summer, I decided I could hold my own against the youth of that day. And I took classes for a year as a non-matriculated student at Berkeley. So some of you probably heard Lou Watts talk for Center for Photographic Art that Ann Jastrup runs recently. Lou Watts was my second photography teacher. He was my teacher that fall when I first matriculated. And Lou Watts barely remembers me. But Lou Watts was a huge influence to me in terms of wanting to go on in photo. And later that year, I took another class with him where I got permission, because at that time, computers were not ubiquitous. We're talking 1994, 1995. The photography classes were in the architecture department, and the architecture department had big money computers and a really nice lab, but it was like, you know, locked down, special permissions, because this equipment was really, really expensive back then. So they had Photoshop, and I had been dying to touch Photoshop for my final project, and he got me permission to work in that lab for a few days for that project. And after that, like, I just knew Photoshop. This is my thing. I love Photoshop. But I was applying to schools during that year, and I was waiting to hear for financial aid from the School of Fine Art. It's changed names now, and I think it just closed down, so I might not even have the name right anymore. The School of Fine Arts in San Francisco, something close to that. It's not the Art Academy there, but the San Francisco Art Academy, and the School of the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. And I could barely, you know, afford to do either. I was waiting on financial aid. I really, really wanted to go to the School of the Museum of Fine Arts, because unlike when my father went and it was total classic, back to the academy. By this time, the Starnes had been through there. The academy had gone wild, and you could basically do anything you wanted for 2 years. You didn't even have to go to class if you didn't want to, as long as you produced work. And I was like, this is my dream environment. I get to do whatever I want for 2 years with all this equipment. And I loved the Starnes, which, if you've seen my work, that's probably not a very wild guess there, that I would be attracted to work like that. So I really wanted to go there. But I went to Hawaii to go to summer school, because the summer school programs at the UC system are self-supporting and they're pricey. And it cost me less to go to Hawaii, fly there, live in a dorm, buy a meal plan, and take 3 classes than it took to take 1 class and support myself and pay the tuition for UC Davis for the summer. Berkeley wasn't offering anything I needed. So I went to Hawaii, and I knew that there was a danger that I would never, ever come back from Hawaii. And I didn't. I went back to school, I went to Hawaii, and then this happened. I went to school, and while I was a student, I met my husband, who is somewhere in the audience here. Can't see him. And had this son. His name is Hapa. And I stayed in Hawaii forever, except when I dragged them to Maryland to go to grad school. But we came back as soon as possible. So that's sort of the story of my getting to that. I went to grad school. I did a lot of work about tourism in Hawaii. And it wasn't very well received there. Most of the faculty viewed the work as, you know, they just couldn't relate to it at all. One person said to me, you know, when I think of Hawaii, I think of lying on a float with a pina colada and the palm trees and And I'm thinking to myself, but I couldn't say it because I was a first-year student. You're who this is about, not who this is meant for. This is meant for the people who live where I live. Very few people were very supportive of my work as far as faculty members went there, but the ones who were got the work and were very supportive. And one of those people was Chris Paraguay, who wasn't an actual faculty, he was a staff, but he may be in the audience here, I can't see. He ran the photo lab at UMBC, and I pretty much attached myself to him for the next 3 years, much to his chagrin. He taught me how to take apart cameras. He taught me how to do all these kind of crazy things with cameras or in darkrooms, like put film through the fix before you put it through the developer. All these kind of things I had always wanted to do and never been able to do because most of my work was digital, because that's all the access I had had really in Hawaii. A couple of student art rooms and that was it. So all my work was pretty much digital. I went to a digital art program, interdisciplinary but digitally based. And all my work stayed pretty digital. I taught digital media until 2013 when I quit. And by that time, the iPhone had been out for several years, and I had been taking pictures with my phone from the time there were chocolate bar phones, before the iPhone. I liked my phone because it was always with me and I didn't have to carry around a lot of stuff. And I was more likely to use a Holga or an oatmeal box than I was to use, you know, a fancy camera setup. So the phone for me was just fine, even if it was tiny. And I had access to software to blow the pictures up using like genuine fractals or whatever. So I was good with it even before the iPhone. But by the time I quit working, the iPhone cameras were pretty decent. And it was really all I was using by that point. So I was working full-time as an artist and, you know, struggling along. I was, you know, working in various shows, group shows, had a few solo shows. And I was going to show some of my work from that period, but this is really about this show. So I decided I would just jump to this show. So in 2017, I came up with this series called Nights as Inexorable as the Sea. It took me a few days to name it. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to say with the name, and somehow this came up. I wish I could explain to you why I named it that, but I don't remember anymore, honestly. This is an overview of the entire series, or most of it, as much as I could fit on the screen, I think. And I still am working on it, but it's mostly finished. You know, I would say I might add a new one and take one out over time, but most of the hardcore development work on this project has been done. I started this project, thought I had put them at the beginning. No, somehow they didn't get in here. I must have had two versions of this. Sorry, this started as a series of 12 tins across, well, 12 images in 6 tins with lid and bottom that were I attached together. And I thought of it sort of like a book. And then I made a second one. And at the time I was taking one of Laura Valenti's classes, I don't remember which one, because I think I've taken all of them, some of them more than once. And you know, she said something to me, and you know, well, when you have a lot more of them, and I was thinking to myself, there is no way I will ever be able to come up with a lot more of 12 images at a time. It will take me years and years and years and years. I need to deal with this in a different way. So they went from 12 images down to these diptychs. And the original genesis for this project was kind of, I was kind of throwing up dirt at a local show that I had never entered it before, but I had sort of avoided it. And part of the reason why I avoided it was that every year with the notice for it to go out, it had this thing about how they wanted you to use this particular framer in town if you could. It's the most expensive framer in town, and they do beautiful work. But I'm thinking, for a show that's taking, you know, amateurs, or a lot of amateurs, let's say, it telling somebody that they have to go to the most expensive shop in town, even with a discount that they got you, is sort of the wrong message to encourage people to do it. Certainly didn't encourage me to do it before that. So I was like, I want to enter this year, but I want to enter something that doesn't have to be framed. And that's how I came up with the tins. Now, my work is always based on a concept. It's not just that, you know, I take a pretty picture and I put some other pretty pictures around it. It's always based on a concept. So in order to do something with tins, I had to have a concept that supported it. And in the case of this, I was using it to talk about dreams and memories. And when I was growing up, people's parents kept mementos, you know, in either scrapbooks or more likely like cookie tins and various tins and cigar boxes. And my family had a store, from my grandfather on my mother's side. My father worked in it too. My family had a store. It sold cigarettes, it sold cigars, it sold liquor, it sold penny candy, the best ever. But it sold these things, and so all of our stuff was in things like that. You know, there was many little boxes in the closet of pictures. My father, being trained as an artist, took a lot of pictures of us growing up, and there was you know, boxes of pictures and things in the closet. So it was that the genesis of that people who are a lot younger than me don't have that experience of doing that. It doesn't make as much sense to them. My son can't remember a time when there wasn't an internet. He can't remember a time when people didn't take pictures with their phone. He can't remember a time when I didn't store everything digitally. Like, there's nothing here in shoe boxes kept as mementos. There just isn't. It's all been digitized, even from that era where, you know, storage was more expensive. By now, it's been digitized. I think my husband has still some, but I've pretty much photographed everything, and it's all digital. So that was the genesis for this, and it really was the 12 images put together, and like that, you know, here it is. I'm entering it. Let's see what they do with it. And it actually won an award. It won a very nice award from a hotel here, a fancy 5-star hotel, that gave me dinner for 4 in their fanciest restaurant. It was a great award. It encouraged me to keep going on the project, that award. That, and the fact that Paula Tognarelli from the Griffin saw the work on my Facebook right after I had made it, before it had been juried into the show. And she said, "Do you have another one of those?" And I was like, "No, but I could make one. Why?" And she asked to show it as the first entry in their book show there. So it went to Boston, 12. It was in a little case in their gift shop or near it opened the night of the jury annual show. And so I got the honor of being the first book that was in there. And so I was working on that in Laura's class, and I just decided I have to do something else with this because I can't keep making 12s. I'm never gonna remember enough of my dreams. I'm never gonna have enough images that fit together nicely as 12s to be able to keep doing this without, being dead before it's done. So I don't want to really work on a project that I'm not going to be able to show forever. So I started playing with it and I broke them down into diptychs. When I broke them down into diptychs, the format of lid and tin became more unwieldy because they weren't level. So one is deeper than the other, and then how do you attach it so it's not wiggling? So I decided I would rip the lids off the boxes and use the bottoms for the book parts as I made the books then, and use the tops for this. And once they were in like this, they also reminded me of lockets. The way you kept a memento close to your heart. So the metaphor kept growing here. So what I wrote about this, and I have to read it, I'm sorry, I don't have this memorized, is that nights as inexorable as the sea considers the quirky and unpredictable nature of dreams and memories. Asleep, existing in that liminal space, situations confront me that I can't quite explain. They're often fraught with absurdities and illogical occurrences. I've always been amazed when friends can recount entire dreams. And mine remain in shards. They're minute fragments of what was. So, and then it becomes a question of, by the next day, even if I wake up and write this down, by the next day, I've forgotten half of that. And 2 days later, half of that. So then it becomes, was it really a dream, or is it this forgotten memory that's sort of seeping up through the crevices of my brain? And I'm never really sure. So due to the ephemeral nature of both dreams and memories, at least for me, these images were intended to simulate those memory boxes which people once stored their family photographs. So I'll take you through the images. The way they are arranged now is the way they're arranged in the gallery in Portland. It isn't necessarily the order in which they were made. Every one of these is a fragment of a dream. So each sequence of each diptych is a dream fragment, but it's that sort of, why is there this piece of cloth and why is there a girl standing in a tutu? Sort of thing. Like I can never quite get the whole dream together to make sense. Strangely, this week, and maybe it's because I knew I was giving this talk, I've been having these weird dreams, and I've been woken up by them, and I'll remember actually the entire dream, but just for a few minutes. I woke my husband up a night or two ago, and I was like, I had this dream, and it was about Trump, and it was a Russian was, threatening him and telling him, it was really weird. I think I've been spending too much time talking to Eric about fake news or something, but I couldn't even remember the rest of it in the morning. But at the time, I remembered a lot of it. But I don't think my husband heard too much of it because, he was sleeping. And the night before, I had a dream about him, and I couldn't remember it in the morning either. So, it's like I remember these bits. But what was weird and interesting to me is that it happened this week that I would remember them when I was giving this talk. So I'm sure somehow in my subconscious, I was dealing with, dreams and memories here. So all of these are, they're all iPhone photos. they're all work that I've shot mostly for this, but some of it comes from my archives because I know I have something that fits. I'll start to flip through these while I talk. They're taken all over the place. Like this is taken in the swimming pool at my gym on the left-hand side, and this is taken on the right and a cane field in Wahiwa, which is the middle of the island where they grow pineapple here. You know, this is a self-portrait, and on the left and on the right is a sign on the North Shore across the street from a supermarket that's across the street from a beach. That photograph is a really old photograph, the one on the right. I took that using an iPhone 3G. I took it around 2010. We were driving in the car, and the lens on that, if you remember your old iPhone 3G back then, it was really, really slow. So when you were standing there with the camera in your hands, you had to wait. Don't jiggle it. Wait till that picture shows up on the screen. When you're taking it in a car, you might as well be shooting with an oatmeal box because there's no way you could predict exactly what was going to be in that frame. The lens was too slow, the car was driving, and you know, I really liked that aspect of it, and I still use that camera, although it barely holds a charge. You know, I can get maybe a half hour out of it before I have to charge it up again, but I still use it for things like that now, where I want to capture motion with a really slow lens, because it gives it the effect of a more expensive camera on a different kind of setting. As the iPhone cameras got better, I had to learn to modify, you know, what I was doing. So here's another image in motion. This is me, you know, moving in my bedroom, and it's taken with probably an iPhone 7 Plus. The lens was a lot better than that. Then to get that effect, I had to actually jerry rig things to my phone. So I was jerry rigging plastic lenses and things like that to my phone. It looks very bad. Command strips, duct tape. People are ashamed to be out with me when I have my camera like that. But it works really good because it gives you that, the effect of a view camera with the lens on a, I'm losing the word here. Like the accordion thingy. I can't think of the word. But you know what I'm talking about.
Like a bellows? Is that what you're talking about?
Bellows, yes, sort of like the lens baby effect. So I'm just going to go through the rest of the images here. If I'm going too fast, Zemi, can you let me know?
Yeah, too fast.
Yeah, maybe a little slower.
Okay. Is that good? That's the right speed.
Yeah, thank you.
So some of these were shot in Martha's Vineyard. Some of them were shot in Hawaii. Some of them were shot in Oregon, actually at Playa at Summer Lake residency I did in 2017. Some of them were shot driving to Playa along the highway.
Diana,
How did you do that last one on the right?
This one?
Uh-huh. Did you, yes, did you do that like you did the other selfie?
That one it's definitely, it's probably the iPhone 6, 5S, something like that. And it's definitely got jerry-rigged lens, but also I shot that with video. I used video, and I used an application that will allow you to export frames. But sometimes I look for the frames that are the in-between frame and not the real frame.
Thank you.
And get it that way on purpose for motion. That would be the same with the one on the right there. And the one on the left is an obvious composite of the other one into the TV. And this is Maui and the Big Island. This is California. This is in Marin County, Hawaii. The house is a composite of a house from Martha's Vineyard. It isn't really a house, it's a shed that was built for Jaws. But if you shoot it from the right angle, it looks like a big house. And I have a love of that house. And then the other is something in motion with some alteration of, I used an app to make the strings whipping around me. So the problem that I had with this series, once I got it down to the diptychs, was that they're small. They're like, 3 by 4 inches. This is a picture that I had from when they were in the Size Matters at the Medium Festival in 2018. And after seeing them there, size matters. Size mattered a lot because this whole show was small. And look at, they're just dwarfed by these other framed photographs. That's less than 12 inches and you barely even notice my work. So I knew I had to do something else with them to be showing them in group shows. So I came up with framing them like this, and I was happy enough with that. Everybody and their brother has an opinion of how I should show this work. And it's never the way I showed it. Everybody has an opinion. You should do this, or you should do that, or you should take it out, or you should put it on like collectible dishes. You should put it on collectible dish stand. You should put shelves around the gallery. You should paint a line around the gallery and line them all up. Forget tins. These should be in suitcases. I worked with suitcases when I was a grad student, and that particular project was my first project of grad school. It has very bad memories of getting beat up by faculty. I'll probably never work with suitcases again because of that. But everybody has an opinion, and I was like, well, I'm putting them like this. People are liking them like this. They're getting into shows like this. They're serving my purpose. I think they look okay. Maybe they're not perfect. For my mind, perfect would be there's 500 of them. Not all different, a lot of repetition of them. I can't come up with 500 of these, but a lot of repetition of them. They're hung from invisible filaments in a small darkened room, very low lighting, different levels of being hung, and you wander through it, and there's like murmuring sounds, like, noises people would make when they're sleeping. So that it's sort of like that experience of a dream. I need a studio to work that out, and I don't have a studio. And the last couple of residencies I applied to, I got turned down. I did get waitlisted for one for this year. It was a very specific time frame. I wrapped it around coming to Oregon for this show. So I gave them a window of 2 weeks on either side of it. So my chances of getting in were slim, but getting waitlisted was good. But then it all got canceled because of the pandemic anyway, so it didn't matter. So I've never been able to really experiment with the vision that I have in my brain for it. I can't really take over my apartment to do that. But that's what I would ultimately like to do with it, at least for show. It's not very salable that way, but I think for showing it would be really interesting to walk through it. I did a lot of installation work as a graduate student, and it involved sound and motion. So then before this show, I started like, I'm shipping it to 2 different places. One's a foreign country. How do I work with it so it's less expensive to ship 24 pieces? And then I decided I was going to take the glazing out of it, which addresses some of the feedback some people had about, it's not touchable, you've hidden it behind glass. So, and I actually think that I'm really, really happy with it this way. If you like it, great. If you hate it the way I've got it framed, it is what it is. These are the way they are staying right now, unless I get to do that other exhibition of them, the one that's only in my brain. I feel like I've finalized the format for them, that this is how they will be. And I'm going to sell them only as framed objects after this time. After working with it for this show and for the one in Sydney, I'm like, I think this is working. So the materials are original photography, burrito prints. Although for this, it started out being Hanamule, but I switched to Moab. I love Moab juniper now. There's cold wax, there's archival foam core, archival adhesives, and of course, there is also the tins. Each is an edition of 25 with 2 APs. I'll use the APs for my own self or for any experimentation I do with them. And then mounted and framed, they're 13 inches square. And if you want to buy one, please do. Please contact the gallery to buy one. And that's it. So I hope I answered some of your questions, and I'm happy to answer any you have.
Thanks, Diana. If you have a question for Diana, if you can raise your hand using the raise hand function, that'll
not letting me stop share. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Oh, there we go. Cool. So if you go to the bottom of your screen, there's a participants button you can push, and that's where you can access the raise hand function. I did see there was, to get it started, there was a question in the chat from Kim Meyer. Do you write or journal about your dreams?
I just write them down, the little fragments I can remember. I don't journal at all. I've tried it for various reasons, and I'm a failure at it. I even tried doing video journaling using my phone and a phone app, and I'm not consistent. I'm just a failure at it. So I write down the little idea. When I was in grad school, in this class on surface tension in motion film, where we altered the surface of films, an undergrad student was in the class, and he and I became really good friends, and he used to listen to conversations like on the bus or subway as he was, going to work. He would write down interesting snippets, and he had a whole book, and he used to title his video from that. And I guess I sort of took that idea with me and made it my own for the dreams in just that little snippet that I keep.
I see a question from Bruce Wilson.
Yeah, hi, thank you. You can hear me okay?
I can.
Yeah.
Okay, so I joined a little late, but I understand it was recorded, so I'll catch it tomorrow. Thank you. So they're beautiful, the images, the diptychs. And, as an emerging, advanced, whatever, photographer trying to exhibit, I'm always looking for meaning. I mean, is it just kind of what we say it is, and that's got to be good enough? There's no fixed criteria for imbuing, one's art with meaning. Can you comment on that?
I'm not quite sure what your question is.
Oh, it seems when you write an artist statement, you've got to sort of frame it in a larger context, or, assign some meaning to it instead of just saying, well, aren't these pretty?
Right.
So is it, our own interpretation, and maybe we frame it, historically, contemporary events, whatever, put some thought into it, and that's kind of got to be good enough?
Well, you probably didn't hear this part because you said you came late. All my work is always based on concept first. So whether the pretty words are written for the statement, the concept is already there. So, I'm trained at a time in school. I did go back as a re-entry student. I'm trained at a time in school where you didn't take individual images and frame them together after. You did projects, you did series. And so and especially in grad school, they're gonna beat into you until you do that kind of stuff. So for me, it's always the concept first. And so I'm probably not the right person to answer that question for you because of, I just got out of school in 2006, and yes, it's 14 years ago, but there's a lot of people who have been working in photography a lot longer than that, would have a totally different experience, even if they got out in, say, 2000.
Oh, I like your answer. Thanks.
There's a question in the chat from Barbara Garber. What are you working on now?
Well, I think I'm finishing up a series called Nokohomi Okahale Kahiko, which is loosely translated Hawaiian to mean relics of a vanishing landscape. And it's about the Hamakua Coast area of the Big Island. And that's actually a series of diptychs. It's my third diptych project. I'm either going to become highly dependent on them or really sick of them in the very near future. But they're on display right now, a series of 12 diptychs on the Big Island for the Kupaipai Fellows 2020 exhibit that's at Kahilu Theater. And there is, if anybody's interested, I can shoot me an email through my website, and I can get you a link to it. But the work is on my website. But the show is actually an amazing show of all kinds of work, not just photography, of the Hawaii class of the Kupaipai Fellows Workshop from this summer. So it's really worth seeing.
Anyone else have a question they wanted to ask before we wrap up? Oh, I see one here that came through on the chat. Do you ever work in color?
I do, sometimes. My self-exposure series is all color. I can maybe share that from my screen if I go to my website. My website is not really cooperating with me right here.
It's always when you need it to work that it won't.
There we go. All right. Oh, it took me into the configuration. So you're going to see the back end of my website here for me to get to it. I don't know why it started out on the real thing, but let's see. Let me share my screen here. Can you see it
Yes.
showing up? Okay. So this work is all color. Very bold, ultimate color. And also this work, which is about my my mom, who was legally blind. This work is all color because she could see color. And the swimmers are color, but the swimmers is probably going to take me 20 years to finish because it involves pools at pricey hotels and certain kind of conditions to be able to shoot them. And especially with the pandemic, that's not going to be happening for a while. Even if I could afford the hotel at some kind of pandemic fire sale rate, there won't be the right amount of people in the pools and stuff, but the swimmers are color as well. Other than that, you have to go back to my really older work for color.
Okay. Well,
Can I ask a
I think, yeah, sure, go ahead.
How did you photograph the swimmers?
I put my iPhone, the iPhone 5S in one of those zip packs that they have for carrying phones under where they're going to get wet. And I swam around the pool.
Nice.
It had to be large pools with a lot of people and a lot of tourists, so that I wasn't the only person swimming around the pool with a camera, because otherwise I would have creeped people out.
Yeah, yeah. Nice.
Okay, well, I think we will wrap things up, but thank you so much, Diana, for your talk, and thank you to everyone for joining us. It was really great to have everyone here. I hope you'll join us next Wednesday at 5 p.m. We have a talk with Angel O'Brien, who I saw her here as well. So she'll be speaking about her work that's on view this month. So, and if you're in the Portland area, I hope you'll come see both shows. We're taking appointments, but also walk-ins. So if we have room, we'll let you in. So, and most likely we will.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Yes, thank you. Have a good evening. Thanks, Diana.
Thank you, Zemi.
Yeah, I'll see you soon.
Thanks, Diana.